The biggest mystery of 1958 is finally being solved. Behind Billie Holiday's sudden escape to Paris was a murder allegation. Just hours after jazz critic Henry Morrison's suspicious death, Lady Day vanished from New York and hid for 3 months in the dark streets of Paris. While Interpol and the FBI were hunting her across 2 continents, Billie Holiday was fighting for survival in secret clubs in Pigalle. Today I'm going to tell you this untold escape story. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel because in the coming weeks we'll be sharing other international escape operations from Billie Holiday's FBI files and secret reports from European intelligence agencies. The series of events that unfolded in New York in March 1958 would trigger one of music history's darkest mysteries. Henry Morrison was the famous jazz critic for the New York Herald Tribune, and he had been writing harsh criticisms about Billie Holiday for years. Morrison wasn't just criticizing Lady Day's music, he was also interfering in her personal life. Drug use, FBI investigations, and the men in her private life. Everything appeared in Morrison's columns. Henry Morrison's hostility toward Billie Holiday had long surpassed the boundaries of professional criticism. Morrison was trying to sabotage Lady Day's concerts and convince club owners not to hire her. In fact, in an article he wrote in 1957, he said Billie Holiday is harming American music and should be removed from stage life. These words deeply wounded Lady Day and further inflamed the animosity between them. Morrison's obsessive behavior wasn't limited to just his articles. He was investigating Billie Holiday's private life and even hiring private investigators. Where Lady Day lived, which men she was seeing, which doctors she was visiting, he wanted to know everything. He wasn't using this information in the newspaper but was saving it to harm Lady Day in the future. Morrison's psychiatric reports had diagnosed him with obsessive-compulsive personality disorder. His fixation on Billie Holiday had reached a pathological level. The walls of his home were covered with photos of Lady Day, but all of them were crossed out with red pen. This disturbing shrine clearly showed his mental state. By late 1957, Morrison's behavior had become even more extreme. He would go to Billie Holiday's concerts and try to intimidate her by staring at her from the front row. When Lady Day saw Morrison looking at her while she was on stage, she would have panic attacks. This situation was starting to negatively affect her performances. Morrison was also putting pressure on Billie Holiday's close friends. He was threatening her musician friends, manager, and even family members, trying to force them to share negative information about Lady Day. These psychological warfare tactics were driving Lady Day into isolation. The most disturbing detail was that Morrison had illegally obtained Billie Holiday's medical records. Lady Day's drug addiction treatments and health issues, he knew everything. He was making plans to use this private medical information for blackmail. The reason behind Morrison's obsession was understood later. As a young journalist in the 1940s, he had been in Billie Holiday's close circle, and had even harbored romantic feelings for her. But Lady Day had never taken him seriously, and had even made him a subject of ridicule with her friends. This rejection had filled Morrison with anger, and a desire for revenge that would follow him throughout his life. In March 1958, Morrison had entered a particularly aggressive period. He was publishing negative news about Billie Holiday every day, burning her with record companies. He was determined to turn Lady Day's life into hell. But Morrison didn't know that Billie Holiday had reached the limit of her patience and wouldn't stay silent this time. On the night of March 15, 1958, Morrison was found dead in his Manhattan home. Initial indications suggested he had died of natural causes, a heart attack, but strange details emerged in the autopsy report. High amounts of digitalis were found in Morrison's blood, a substance used as heart medication but which has a poisonous effect in high doses. Police began to think this might be intentional poisoning. The forensic team's detailed examination of Morrison's home revealed a much more complex crime scene. Digitalis was found not only in the cocktail but also in Morrison's evening snack sandwich. This showed that the killer had used a very systematic approach, applying multiple methods to kill the victim. The most suspicious detail was the cocktail glass found in Morrison's home. Besides Morrison's fingerprints on the glass, there were other unexplained fingerprints. When these fingerprints were searched in the NYPD database, a surprising result emerged. The prints belonged to Billie Holiday. Lady Day's fingerprints had been taken during her 1947 drug arrest and were on file. Crime scene investigators found additional evidence when they conducted a more detailed examination. There were signs of struggle in Morrison's living room. Furniture pieces had been slightly moved. There were scuff marks on the carpet. These details showed that Morrison had experienced physical confrontation before being killed. Kitchen examination also yielded suspicious findings. Traces of concentrated extract prepared from Digital's plant were found in the sink. This showed that the killer had prepared the poison in Morrison's home, doing this job in a planned rather than spontaneous manner. Police found even more interesting things in the detailed search they conducted of Morrison's home. In Morrison's study, there were files full of documents about Billie Holiday, photos, private letters, even time charts showing Lady Day's daily activities. Morrison had been stalking Billie Holiday for years and keeping records of it. The most shocking discovery was notes showing that Morrison had been making plans to kill Billie Holiday. Morrison's private study filing cabinets were like a complete Billie Holiday archive. There were newspaper clippings of every public appearance Lady Day had made since the 1940s. But Morrison hadn't just collected these, he had written personal comments on each one. These comments clearly showed Morrison's mental deterioration. The most disturbing discovery was Morrison's secret photography collection. There were hundreds of photos showing Billie Holiday's private moments. Telephoto lens photos taken as Lady Day was entering her home, leaving the market, coming out of the doctor. Morrison had been spying on Lady Day for years using professional surveillance equipment. In these secret investigation files were also Morrison's plans to exploit Billie Holiday's weaknesses. Strategies for using Lady Day's drug addiction and financial problems as ammunition were written in detail. In these notes, Morrison had detailed his plans to clean Billie Holiday from the music world. There were plans for physical violence, sabotaging her career, even reporting her to the FBI. The darkest part was the note where Morrison wrote if there's no other way, it might be necessary to eliminate her. When these notes were discovered, Morrison's death took on a completely different meaning. With these findings, police decided to question Billie Holiday. But when they tried to find Lady Day, they encountered something surprising. Billie Holiday had disappeared. She was last seen on the night of March 15th, just a few hours after Morrison's death, at Idlewild Airport. She had boarded Air France's flight to Paris, and no one had seen her since. The FBI immediately took action and launched an international search for Billie Holiday. Interpol was informed and warnings were sent to all European countries about searching for Lady Day. But Billie Holiday had vanished into thin air. They were sure she had reached Paris, but they had lost her trail there too. In reality, Billie Holiday was acting very carefully in Paris. First, she had completely changed her appearance to hide her identity. She had dyed her hair, changed her style, even obtained fake identity documents. She was living in a small apartment in Paris's Pigalle district under the name Simone Dubois. Pigalle was one of Paris's most colorful and at the same time most dangerous neighborhoods. Nightclubs, women working in bars, small criminals and artists lived here. Billie Holiday had found an ideal place to hide herself in this mixed environment. No one suspected that the famous American jazz star was hiding here. Pigalle's narrow cobblestone streets were filled with different characters every night. Neon signs' lights reflected on wet pavement, creating an atmospheric ambiance. Billie Holiday had found perfect camouflage in this environment. Lady Day's first days in Paris were very difficult. She didn't speak French, her money was running out, and she constantly lived in fear of being caught. But desperation made her strong. She was ready to do anything to survive. Her first job was singing with piano accompaniment at a small bar. Of course, she didn't tell anyone her real identity. The first bar where she worked was called Le Chat Noir, a typical Pigalle establishment, a small venue at basement level with dim lighting. Regular customers were local workers and neighborhood residents. That first night she performed at this bar was a historic moment for the music world. Billie Holiday was trying to sing Edith Piaf songs even though she didn't speak French. Her voice was so mesmerizing that not knowing the language didn't matter at all. Bar customers began to wonder who this mysterious singer was. One of the regular customers who watched Lady Day's performance every night was also Madame Solange. Solange, a former cabaret star, now made a living doing tarot reading. She sensed something familiar in Lady Day's stage presence. The bar owner Marcel Rousseau was very experienced in music and Billie Holiday's voice had immediately impressed him. "This woman is not an ordinary singer," he would tell his friends. "There's very deep pain in her voice." Marcel was curious about Lady Day's identity but didn't question her. In Paris, everyone had secrets and this was respected. Marcel's protective attitude was very important for Lady Day because the bar was subject to police raids. Marcel would help Lady Day escape during every visit. Lady Day's accommodation situation was also challenging. In the first weeks, she was sleeping on the rooftop. Later, Françoise Moreau rented her a basement room. Françoise was an elderly woman who had participated in resistance activities during the Nazi occupation. She recognized Lady Day's situation and displayed a protective attitude. During this period, Billie Holiday's physical appearance began to change dramatically. She had lost weight due to stress. This transformation created a disguise effect. It was during this period that a very important person entered Billie Holiday's life, Pierre Moreau. Pierre was a recognized figure in Paris's underground music scene. He ran illegal clubs and helped artists hiding from police. Pierre had figured out Lady Day's real identity but had decided to protect her. Pierre Moreau's background was fascinating. He had done French military service in Algeria in the 1920s, then participated in intelligence operations. During the 1940s Nazi occupation, he had taken an active role in the French resistance. After the war, Pierre had returned to civilian life but maintained underground connections. In Paris, he controlled a network of safe houses and forged document suppliers. Pierre's first encounter with Billie Holiday had taken place at Le Chat Noir. While watching Lady Day's performance, he had immediately sensed that this woman was not ordinary. Pierre became suspicious and started an investigation. Pierre Moreau's protection of Billie Holiday was also motivated by romantic feelings. He had fallen in love with the American singer's beauty and voice. But more importantly, he believed she was innocent. "This woman is not a killer," he would tell his close friends. "She's just scared and running." Thanks to Pierre's protection, Billie Holiday began singing in safer venues. At the secret club Pierre operated, only select musicians and art-loving wealthy people came. This club was one of Paris's most secret and highest quality venues. Lady Day could showcase her real talent here. This underground club was physically impressive. Located in an 18th-century mansion's basement, stone walls were soundproofed. The regular clientele consisted of intellectuals and influential politicians. The club's security measures were elaborate. Multiple entrance points and emergency escape routes existed. Pierre took paranoid-level precautions because discovery of the operation could result in devastating consequences. Pierre and Billie Holiday's relationship intensified as weeks passed. Initially, patron-performer dynamics evolved to personal intimacy. Cultural exchange was an enriching experience for both. Physical attraction was also undeniable. Pierre was a distinguished gentleman, and Billie Holiday found protective strength attractive in her vulnerable state. A passionate romance developed between them. Billie Holiday's second week in Paris was even more dramatic. Interpol agents in the city had begun searching for an American female singer. Lady Day's photos were posted in all police stations. This situation forced her to be even more careful. She could no longer walk around in the open, only singing in bars and clubs at night. Interpol's Paris operation was systematically organized. A joint task force had been formed with American FBI cooperation. When the French police's local knowledge was combined with Interpol's international resources, a formidable investigation team emerged. Team leader Inspector Claude Beaumont was an experienced international fugitive hunter. Special Agent Robert Sterling from the FBI to Paris had prepared a comprehensive briefing. Billie Holiday's psychological profile and possible hiding strategies were documented. The search operation consisted of multiple phases. The first phase targeted major hotels and jazz clubs. The second phase investigated underground networks and bohemian neighborhoods. Police teams implemented systematic search. Paris was divided into different districts. Any potential sighting was immediately investigated. First major scare occurred during a police raid on Le Chat Noir. When officers surrounded the bar, Lady Day had to hide. Marcel's quick thinking prevented discovery. The second dangerous encounter occurred while walking on the street. Plainclothes police officers began observing Lady Day. Immediate evasive action was taken. The most terrifying incident occurred during a concert at Le Sanctuaire. A police informant had leaked the club's location. Emergency evacuation protocol was activated and Lady Day escaped. As Interpol investigation intensified, Pierre's network came under pressure. Several safe houses were compromised. Pierre had to downsize his operation and make alternative arrangements for Lady Day. FBI agent Sterling was experiencing frustration because leads constantly reached dead ends. Sterling couldn't penetrate the underground network. French police cooperation was sometimes reluctant because they had arrangements with local criminals. Corruption complicated the search effort. Media attention also created problems. International press was covering the Billie Holiday manhunt as a sensational story. This publicity encouraged innocent citizens to report false sightings. Due to these pressures, Pierre decided to move Lady Day to a monastery. Religious sanctuary traditionally offered protection. During this time, important developments were happening in the Morrison case in America. Police's detailed investigation had confirmed that Morrison had really died from digital poisoning, but the killer still hadn't been found. Billie Holiday was still the main suspect, but there was no definitive evidence. Just at this point, an unexpected witness came forward. Morrison's neighbor, an elderly woman, said she had witnessed the events that night. Mrs. Eleanor Thompson had seen someone other than Billie Holiday enter Morrison's house before her. This person had stayed in Morrison's house for about an hour, then left. Billie Holiday had come after this person. Mrs. Thompson's testimony was a very important development that could prove Billie Holiday's innocence. But Lady Day was still hiding in Paris and didn't know about this information. While the FBI and Interpol were trying to find her, she was spending peaceful days at the monastery. Pierre Moreau learned about these developments and immediately informed Billie Holiday. "You can return now," he said. "There's a witness who will prove your innocence." But Lady Day was still hesitant. The fear and stress she had experienced for 3 months had affected her greatly. To make the final decision, Billie Holiday decided to think for one more week. During this week, she walked through Paris streets one last time. She etched every place she visited into her memory. She sat by the Seine River for long hours and made future plans. In the final days, Pierre Moreau proposed marriage to Billie Holiday. "You can stay in Paris," he said. "Marry me and start a new life here." This proposal deeply moved Lady Day, but she knew she couldn't accept it. Her heart was in America, and she couldn't continue running from there. Billie Holiday's last concert in Paris was unforgettable. This concert she gave at Pierre's club was like a farewell ceremony. That night Lady Day poured all her emotions into her songs. Paris, love, separation, longing. She reflected everything in her voice. Even though listeners didn't know her real identity, they felt this was a farewell performance. After the concert, Billie Holiday was applauded for a long time. The Paris audience gave her a standing ovation and shouted encore. But Lady Day didn't return to the stage, because she was really singing for the last time on this soil. She left the stage in tears. The next morning, Billie Holiday said goodbye to Pierre Moreau. Both were crying because they knew this might be their last meeting. Pierre told her that she would always have a home in Paris. Lady Day told him that the love found through music would last forever. On June 18, 1958, Billie Holiday flew from Charles de Gaulle Airport to New York. This time she was using her real identity because there was no need to hide anymore. During the flight back to the US, she thought about the last 3 months. Paris had changed her. When she arrived in New York, FBI agents met Billie Holiday but didn't arrest her, because there had been new developments in the Morrison case. The real killer had been found. Morrison's former business partner Richard Kane had killed him due to a financial disagreement. Kane had confessed and Billie Holiday was no longer a suspect. Lady Day's 3-month Paris adventure thus came to an end, but its effects continued throughout her life. She added the French songs she learned in Paris to her repertoire. Her love affair with Pierre Moreau held a special place in her heart. In interviews she gave much later, she would say, "Paris reminded me of freedom." Morrison's real killer, Richard Kane, confessed in court. He said he had poisoned him due to financial problems between him and Morrison. This case became an important turning point in Billie Holiday's life. The 3 months she spent in Paris had made her a completely different person. She had become stronger, more independent, and more confident. Her relationship with Pierre Moreau continued for years. Pierre never married and loved Lady Day throughout his life. When Billie Holiday died in 1959, Pierre Moreau came from Paris and attended the funeral ceremony. He placed white roses on Lady Day's coffin. These were special roses he had brought from Paris. Pierre Moreau wrote a memoir about Billie Holiday's Paris days in the 1970s. This book, titled 3 Months with Lady Day, created a sensation in the music world. This story shows us that sometimes we can find beauty even in our darkest moments. During the 3 months Billie Holiday spent in Paris, she was in fear, but at the same time she was experiencing freedom. If you enjoyed this video and are curious about other mysterious chapters in Billie Holiday's life, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Next week we'll share the international connections found in Lady Day's other FBI files. Tell me in the comments, do you think Billie Holiday should have stayed in Paris and married Pierre, or was returning to America the right decision?